Well, the question today is, do I plant today or do I get another day to dry out? Well, after this disaster of the year, I'm so broke I don't even have a coin to flip to figure out which one I do, because I sure as heck don't know. So what do? Do I wait for better conditions or do I go ahead and put the seed in the ground? Well, like I said in the intro, there's no doubt after last week, we were last in the field 9 days ago, 10 days ago, I think, last Saturday. And since then, we've had about 5.5 inches over the course of the week. And there's no doubt that this ground, I mean, it's still wet. I mean, it's still heavy. Problem is, when we were last planting, we were planting in my ideal wheat planting window, and 10 days later, we are no longer in the ideal wheat planting window. We're now several days into November. Days have gotten short, ground gets wet. It just doesn't dry out very quickly at all. Anyway, we've got a good weather window this week before I think rain's supposed to come back in this coming weekend, along with a pretty massive cold front. So do I plant in less ideal conditions to give the wheat another 24 hours in the ground to begin the germination process before the rain, before the massive cold front, or do I give another day to dry out and plant in better conditions, but we got less time before the next rain and cold front? Tell you what, it's a difficult question, but anyway, we've planted a short test strip right here, and I mean, you know, it's closing up the seed trench. It's kind of gumming up the soil a little bit. It's not really crumbling like it should, but I mean, it is closing up the seed trench. And my thinking is that I've seen as little a difference as 6 to 8 hours make the difference on whether you get a good stand or whether you got to replant. And I'm thinking, you know, we got warm weather this week, relatively warm anyway, and go ahead and get that seed in the ground, let the germination process begin before it's hit with another round of rain and then cold weather. You know, we got this loosely covered seed trench, gonna let warm air kind of get down there to the seed, hopefully speed up the germination process a little bit. I think that's going to be better than giving it another 24 hours to dry out, and the conditions will be marginally better for planting. You know, I think that's going to give us the best chance of success, but I mean, ultimately, I mean, we won't know until long after the fact. That's why I was saying in the intro, I might be better off just flipping a coin, but I ain't got a coin to flip right now. So anyway, what we've done to improve our chances for success, we've shallowed up our planting depth a little bit, 1 notch, to let the seed be in there shallower. It should decrease the amount of time that it takes for the wheat to come out of the ground. And then we've also increased our planting rate. I talked about in the other video how 1.8 million seeds per acre was kind of the optimal planting rate in the time frame that we were planting in. Now we're outside the optimal planting window, so we've now increased the rate to 2 million seeds per acre because the wheat's not going to have as much time to tiller out before it starts heading out next spring. So we need to put more seeds per acre out here to make sure that we've got enough tillers to make a good yield. So we bumped our planting rate up some, and that's really about all we can do. Now, like I said, I think this coming up weekend, according to Ryan Hall, I mean, we're supposed to have a massive cold front. Like, we're supposed to have temperatures like 25 degrees below average, and that's really going to slow down this germination process. So if we can have an extra 24 hours and, you know, temperatures with high temperatures around 65 to 70, it's just going to benefit the wheat crop that much more. But looking at the short strip that I planted, I mean, we don't have mud sticking to the gauge wheel tires. We got a little bit sticking there to the press wheels and the closing wheels, but overall I've planted in worse conditions, and every minute that sun's out, this soil's going to be drying up a little bit more. So I think we'll be all right, and I think the right decision is to plant now. However, we won't know until a lot later. Anyway, we're planting right beside where we stopped planting 10 days ago. Let's dig up some of that seed we planted and see what it looks like. Now, we don't have any seed emerged right now, which is really kind of surprising. Even though I know that cold rain really slowed things down, I still would have thought in 10 days wheat would have probably come on up, but it hasn't. Look how gummy that soil is where it was disturbed. All right, there's a seed right there. You can see we got a short sprout on it, so I mean, it has germinated. It just, well, the sprout just fell off. But anyway, pinch it and smell it. Doesn't smell rotten or anything. It had a viable sprout on it, so I mean, maybe the wheat that we planted 9 days ago, maybe it'd be all right, and we'll mess around and get a stand and not have to come back and replant it. It's just funny that we went so quickly from having pretty much a record drought in this area and having, you know, ideal wheat planting conditions to 9 days later, the wheat planting looks like it's gone to crap. We're late again, wet conditions, cold conditions. We could have gotten the wheat off to a really great start, and now it looks like it's not going to be off to a great start. It's going to be off to a slow start, which is not going to bode well for having maximum yields that we need this year. But anyway, it is what it is. It's very rare in farm that we're dealing with ideal conditions. So only thing I know to do, go put this seed in the ground and hope and pray for the best. Well, something else changed by being outside my ideal wheat planting window. It's now getting dark at 4:30 in the afternoon. Well, sun hadn't set yet, but it might as well have with all these tall tree lines around the field. Our light's going to be going on before very long. I hate it that they moved daylight savings time up farther in November, I don't know, several years ago. And the other thing about planting wheat in November, it really doesn't matter about daylight savings time. I mean, I can start earlier. Days are still the same amount of time, but the days have definitely gotten shorter. And when you're dealing with wet ground, that's less time for it to dry out. And you know, we're just a little over a month and a half away from the shortest day of the year, so it's always a struggle once the calendar flips in November, just trying to get everything done in the field, just because you're limited by the length of day. Luckily, I mean, drilling wheat, I mean, we can plant wheat all night if we want to. You know, if a dew falls, it's not going to stop us. But once we get done drilling our wheat and then we get ready to cut our double crop beans, that's where that short day really comes into play, is just making things drag out a whole lot longer, because at best you can only cover about 2/3 of the ground that you in a normal day in November than what you could say in September and early October, just because the days have gotten so much shorter. And I know the years before I bought that 7120 combine with the Draper head, I mean, I dreaded cutting double crop beans, because we had a 2366 with a 25-foot 1020 auger platform, and I mean, we would already be done cutting beans for the rest of the day. As soon as the sun hits the top of those trees, you just might as well shut it down. Otherwise, I mean, you're just going to start pushing up piles everywhere. Stuff won't feed, and oh man, it was really a struggle getting our wheat beans cut with that in November. But ever since we bought that 7120 and upgraded to that 35-foot Draper head, Draper head, we can tilt the cutter bar to get those knives up out of the wheat straw, that damp wheat straw, that rotten wheat straw that wants to push up in piles. We can raise our knives up above that, and we can still cut a decent ways on into the evening. But you still can't cover as much ground as you could, you know, you know, like back in September when the sun was setting, you know, 7 o'clock or later, you just can't cut that long, because this time of year, by the time the dew dries and, you know, you get to really good cutting conditions, you know, you only got, you know, 3 or 4 hours every day in really good cutting conditions before it starts getting damp again. So anyway, light's gonna come on in a while, and we're gonna run a good long time with the lights on tonight. We're over half done with Ellington. We finished up on my mom's farm, so we got about another 13 acres here on Ellington. We got the cell tower farm, 36 acres over there, and then I want to get to Williams and hopefully get a little bit done over there before I call it quits today. We got a late start today just because it was wet, and there's a couple other things we had to do this morning, but we're not going to quite get 100 acres done today, but I want to get a lot closer to 100 than what I'm at right now. Well, we just got done for the day. It's about 11 o'clock. Well, unfortunately, I'm not really done for the day because Andy was bush hogging today and pulled in the shop, and all of a sudden lost all oil pressure. Now, my father-in-law mentioned to me that he had started reading lower oil pressure on the gauge back when he was cutting stalks, but I mean, it was still in the green, so didn't think much about it. Figured, oh, we probably got another gauge going out, maybe a sending unit, whatever. But anyway, today it lost all oil pressure on the gauge, so luckily Andy was right here by the shop, quickly got it here in the shop, and I got 1 or 2 problems. Either we don't have any actual oil pressure in the engine, probably got a bad pump, or we got a bad sending unit or bad gauge. But anyway, I called the resident sound guard expert, my buddy Dylan, and asked him if they'd ever had an oil pump go out on their tractors, and they said no, they've never had them out. Of course, the most likely problem is got a sending unit that went bad, but kind of weird to me that it started registering lower oil pressure and ran like that for a few days before losing all oil pressure. That symptom kind of makes me think that there's a good chance we might have to be pulling the oil pan off and replacing the oil pump. But before we go to all that trouble, we're going to first make sure it's not the actual gauge or the sending unit. And let's see, Dylan told me the oil pressure sensor was somewhere over here under the fuel filters, and well, let's see, that looks like that's probably it right there. So I'm gonna pull that out this evening and let Andy carry it to Napa, match up the size to get a mechanical gauge to go on there, just to, you know, verify that you know, whether we've actually got oil pressure in the engine or not. And if the mechanical gauge shows we got no oil pressure, then the oil pan's coming off. And I don't know, it sure would be nice if we can get that oil pan off without having to pull that dozer frame out from under the tractor, but I don't know if we got enough clearance. I guess if we verify that we don't have any oil pressure, that'd be another question for the resident sound guard expert, Mr. Dylan Joyce. So anyway, all I'm gonna do tonight, just pull that out so Andy can get the right size gauge to go in there, and then I'm gonna head to the house, find me some supper. This morning we're changing wheat varieties. We're going over to our Sage 26R59. We had been planting some Vault 2644, and we don't have a whole lot of our Sage 26R59, but we're going to plant it. And then on the front hopper of the truck, we got some certified 26R59, and I'll talk more about that once we get in the tractor. All right, Andy just helped me finish filling up and everything, and so this is a new variety of seed, our saved 26R59, and this seed looks significantly bigger than that 26R44 I was planting. And we counted seed and measured it to see how many seeds per pound that there is, and that variety I was planting was 13,500 seeds per pound, and this variety comes in at 12,000 seeds per pound. So that's a pretty big discrepancy, and we need to adjust our seeding rates. So we did have this thing set on about 147, 148 pounds per acre to get us the 2 million seeds per acre of the old variety. Well, we need to increase that to about 165 pounds an acre to get us the same planting rate of this bigger seed. On this ruler, each 1/32 of an inch represents about 5 pounds per acre increments. So right now it's set on about 24/32. So to get us another almost 20 pounds an acre, we need to put this just a hair over 20/32 of an inch. All right, that ought to be pretty close. Now we'll do the other side. Now, just to verify, I mean, we're not going to recalibrate or anything, but I'm going to reset my acre meter there in the tractor, and I know we got right at 3,900 pounds of seed in the box, and that 3,900 pounds of seed should get us over about 23.63 acres. All right, a little bit of update on our 4440. I got the pressure sender pulled off last night, and this morning before we came out of the field, me and Andy is going to check the gauge to make sure it was all right, and supposedly the way it works, if you ground out the wire going to the gauge, it should peg the gauge all the way over. You take it off, it should be all the way over the other way. And anyway, I told Andy to turn the key on, and I was going to touch the wire, and he misunderstood me. Instead of turning the key on, he started the tractor. I found out real quick we got oil pressure. So good news is I don't think that it's the oil pump, because let me tell you, oil shot out of that hole probably about 15 feet high and got all over the shop floor. So he's still going to go get a mechanical gauge later today and measure the actual pressure, but as of right now, I don't think we're going to have to pull off the oil pan, which is good news. It means he can keep on bush hogging. So I got a little dirty this morning, but hey, that's the kind of dirty that puts a smile on my face when I found out I ain't got to replace an oil pump. And then also yesterday he was bush hogging around the edges of the fields, and today he's got to spread a little bit of fertilizer on this wheat ground over there on Clanton, the front half of the farm, 78 acres. Landlords don't want me spreading chicken litter up there close to their houses and stuff. So I mean, we respect that, and we just use regular commercial fertilizer. So we need to get some fertilizer out on that to get this wheat by until we get to a side dress application. And as sky high as DAP is, I mean, it's like $900 a ton, just absolutely insane. We're not putting out any DAP, also not putting out any potash, because we put out a healthy shot of potash based upon soil test results last year on the cotton. And well, the cotton didn't get to use any of that potash because it didn't get any, it got just enough rain after we made the application to just melt it and get it into the soil. So the cotton didn't use up any of the potash. It's all out there, so we're saving money. We're not putting out any potash on there, but we do need to get some nitrogen, enough nitrogen to get the wheat up and going and tillering, and also some sulfur. So he's putting out 35 pounds per acre of urea, 35 units per acre. And then we're also doing a little bit of experimenting this year. In the past, I've been a big fan of ammonium sulfate, and it's a great product, but I mean, it is expensive, and we use it to get the sulfur out of it that crops need. Generally our crops need about a 10-to-1 ratio of nitrogen to sulfur. And the thing about sulfur is that it's just like nitrogen in that the soil does not hold it. It can be easily leached out through the soil. So if I put out ammonium sulfate now, the sulfate is readily available, but the wheat's not going to be using very much, hardly any, if all winter long. We have all the rainfall of the winter. It's going to leach all the sulfur out of the profile, and then it's not going to be there. So rather than using ammonium sulfate, we're going to use elemental sulfur, which is in a non-plant available form, and it has to go through a breakdown and conversion process in the soil before it's actually in a plant available form, and this takes time. A great product. It's definitely a lot cheaper per pound of sulfur compared to ammonium sulfate, but it's not going to be readily available immediately, which is fine. I don't necessarily want it readily available immediately. I want it to be available in the spring. However, microbial activity that converts the elemental sulfur over to the sulfate form is, I mean, they're really not going to be active in the winter. So, you know, we're going to put on the sulfur, but is it going to be available exactly when I need it? I don't know. Now, we will be coming back with other forms of sulfur. Our first shot of nitrogen has always been 28004, which has got a 4% sulfur in it that's immediately available. We'll be coming back with that probably late January. And then this year, instead of going back with 32% straight nitrogen on our second shot, probably going to go back again with 28004 just to get another shot of sulfur out there. So we're putting out about 33 actual pounds of sulfur through elemental sulfur, and I know some of it will be available next spring for the wheat. That should be it should be enough. But then also hopefully we see a pretty decent response from our soybean crop next year too, our double crop soybeans, and that a good part of that sulfur should be available for those double crop soybeans. And then we're also doing another test. We got 1,500 pounds of just straight elemental sulfur, and we're going to spread some of that on our canola, and then we're going to spread some of that on our wheat ground that's got chicken litter on it. And the reason we're trying that is that, you know, sulfur used to be readily available from the atmosphere in the form of acid rain, but since we got all these emission controls, it's cleaned a lot of sulfur out of the diesel. We're not getting the sulfur fertilizer from the rainfall that we used to for decades and decades. And I mean, our air is just getting cleaner, freer of sulfur, and we're getting less and less sulfur each year. So normally with chicken litter, I count on that giving us about 25 pounds per acre of sulfur. Just like elemental sulfur, it's not always, you know, it's not immediately available. It has to be broken down in the soil. So we're doing a little bit of experiment this year to see if adding extra sulfur is going to increase yields. Now, I had a commenter that's on one of our videos, I think when we were the canola planting video, that seemed to be very knowledgeable about planting canola. And I mean, I'm open to advice about a crop I don't know, but he says canola is a very high user of sulfur, and he says instead of that 10-to-1 ratio of nitrogen to sulfur that we need on most of our other crops, he says canola really needs a 5-to-1 ratio on sulfur. So we're going to spread a little over 30 pounds of actual sulfur on some of our canola ground, and then also some of our wheat ground, about 30 acres of our wheat ground that's got chicken litter on it. And then we're going to see if that gives us any kind of extra yield boost by getting that sulfur out there. Now, this test is going to cost me, I think, about $15 an acre to get an extra, you know, 32, 33 pounds of sulfur out there. But, you know, it could be eye-opening. I don't know if it will be on the wheat, but we ought to really find on the canola if we're going to continue to grow canola, if we really need to be upping our sulfur on that. Now, fortunately, our buggy is capable of spreading pretty low rates. You know, we've spread 35 pounds an acre of product before and done a good job. So I feel pretty confident in being able to put that elemental sulfur in the buggy and getting it spread. My only concern is kind of the spread pattern, because elemental sulfur it's like a flaky material. It's not a pelletized material like your DAP, potash, urea, and so on. So I don't know if we'll quite get as good a spread pattern out of it, but we're going to put it out there and we're going to study it. We're going to see if we see any results. So anyway, that's your elementary fertility lesson for today. Don't really know if I taught anything, but I did showcase what we're hoping to learn and become better farmers ourselves in nutrient management going forward.